Something sinister is sporting a new look. Here's your look at the new Mattel Master Universe, new Eternia Skeletor. Using his mastery of mystical havoc energy, the madman Skeletor uncovered the violent spell that can forge the Scimitar of Chaos, a weapon that collects souls and grants ultimate power to he who wields it. In an undisciplined hand, however, it will bring about the end of Eternia. To be the master of the universe, he must first master death, but at what cost? Evil goes beyond just skin and bones. Before we get a closer look at the new Master Universe, new Eternia Skeletor, let's grab first the ruler to see how tall the figure stands. With this head sculpt, being the fact that the figure does come include with 2 after all, this Skeletor stands at around 7¼ inches in height, or just a little over 18 centimeters tall. And for those, of course, wanting their size comparisons of other figures, bring in the previously looked at new Eternia He-Man. Seems like he's wobbling just a little bit. Do my eyes play tricks on me, or does it seem like He-Man stands a little taller than Skeletor? And I'm not just saying because he has the horned helmet on either. Speaking of slightly smaller Skeletors, let's bring in a slightly smaller Skeletor. Here's what he looks like next to the Revelation Skeletor. I didn't realize every single time we continue to bring Skeletor in, are we not reminded just how small that figure seems? Now, of course, when it looks like the figures aren't using the same molds. Legs, perhaps, yes. Torsos, perhaps, also. But it does seem like the new Eternia Skeletor uses completely different arms than the ones that we got with the Revelation version. Skeletor does come include with some stuff. Let's have a look at that stuff right now. First of all, the figure comes include with a sword. And if you were expecting that the figure could come include with half the power sword, unfortunately, you would have guessed wrong. Instead, what he actually gets is something almost Arabian-like. A curved blade. Ooh! Should never stop joking about that. Stop joking about that. One of these days, you're going to cry wolf, and your finger's going to be bleeding. His sword is plastic. As you can see, it's been painted the blade nicely in silver. The guard and hilt, what's rather interesting about it is, seems like it's got a head on the top of it. I'm not sure specifically what that head is supposed to be, but it definitely does seem like there's eyes looking at me. It almost looks, just by the way they've molded and marbled the plastic, almost looks like he's got a bit of a smile. Doesn't it kind of seem like he's got a little smile on the end of his sword? Who really cares? I know, we're talking about nonsense, tops of swords. The figure does hold the sword. He does technically come with 2 gripping hands. I didn't have to Did I actually have to pop the hands out? I don't believe so. No, I did not. I'm just recalling right now. The figure does come with 2 gripping hands stock out of the packaging as such. Go ahead and take the figure, and you can either put the sword in this hand if you want to, which I gotta say, of the 2 hands, this holds the sword a lot better. Or if you prefer something slightly loosier-goosier, you can actually fit it into this hand as well. He has a trigger finger, which seems really strange because he doesn't come included with a gun at all. I guess this is kind of more so if you want a more pointing hand. Yes, the collar. We're going to talk more about the torso piece in a second. It's all loose. It is. That's probably why they've decided to display the hand in a pointing, not necessarily for him holding a gun, but more so instructing his minions, go attack Castle Grayskull. Another such accessory he comes also included with as well, just getting the figure to stand here, comes with his Havoc Staff. It's a nice looking Havoc Staff, I have to say. It's all molded in plastic. Strange though, the top of the Havoc Staff seems like it's something that could be removable. In fact, you could detach it if you want to, and like Revelation, you could just have the actual skull on its own. It seems, going ahead and plug this back into place, that it did take some cues, at least in the sense that you could detach the top here. Similar type of Havoc Staff than the one that came included with the Revelation Skeletor. Although the skull is a lot bigger, the horns a lot greater. It also seems as well, it's a lot thicker of a staff also. I kind of like this one a lot more. At least it does come included with the Havoc Staff. That's going to be my go-to when displaying the figure. Still, I don't know why they had to have this as a separate piece. It would have just made, from a standpoint of cost producing these molds, would it not just have been easier just to mold all the staff together and not have this as a separate piece? Yeah, sure, it's fine if you wanted to detach it, have it as a separate piece, but for me, I just think it makes much more sense just if they had molded everything together. I'll also play some significant role later on, similar to how it tied into the Revelation with its version of the Havoc Staff. And of course, this can fit into his hand as well. Go ahead, take the figure and remove the sword. By the way, there is no section that I can see on the back that holds the Havoc Staff, but there's certainly a section that you can take the sword and slide the sword into the back. One thing, unfortunately, about it, though, is while you put the cape over top of it, if you keep the cape on, it's going to cause, believe you me, even more problems keeping the torso armor in place. You see the sword sticks out to the side, but does lift the cape and sort of ultimately pushes this up as well. So I'd probably decide for myself instead to display him with the sword once you've removed the torso piece. And if you think it's super hard to remove it, it's not. Oh, no, it's not. Let's go ahead and just lift the cape for now and just remove the sword. Put that to the side. Drape that back over. Figure also comes included. One last couple of things for accessories. A similar, actually, He-Man. I'm going to bring in He-Man's here for a second. Both of them did have relaxed hands. It's strange. One random relaxed hand. And then the figure also comes with one random fist. Exact same. Not the same mold, no, but very similar idea. One fist, one relaxed hand. So strange. The last thing Skeletor comes included with might be possibly my favorite thing. The figure comes included with an alternate head sculpt. If you like the look of classic Skeletor and not too keen on the new Eternia look for him, which we'll talk more about in a second, this certainly does fit the bill rather nicely. It might possibly be one of the best Skeletors we've gotten of this scale and size. Not counting, of course, the ones we got from Matty Collector back in the days. Really like the look of that one quite a bit. It trumps, I feel, the one that we got from the Revelation line. If you do like, of course, the look of classic-looking Skeletor, which really Revelation isn't trying to do in the first place. Before we actually do change out the head sculpts, I'm going to go ahead and pick Skeletor up because I did want to show you what the stock sculpt looks like. It's a rather interesting head. I got to say, like, Skeletor does things better than He-Man. Doesn't Skeletor always seem to do things better than He-Man, especially when it comes to the categories of evil? What's rather interesting about this head sculpt is that, first of all, he does have a helmet on. If you can overlook the fact that that's not something that Skeletor tends to do a whole lot of. One of the things a little jarring also as well is he does have a chin beard. Skeletor has a chin beard. Now, I'm not going to try to explain this by science, how bone could grow hair. Just the idea that Skeletor does have a chin beard, gotta admit, is pretty cool. Just to show you the difference between the two head sculpts, though, this is, again, more the classic look of Skeletor, and this is kind of, again, Mattel's new take on the new Eternia Skeletor. I wonder if we are going to be getting more characters under the new Eternia banner. Just by the way, too, also to bring back in He-Man, if you did want to have both of them displayed with helmets, then definitely these do fit the bill. This one, more, again, inspired by the original concept art. This one really isn't, because a lot of Skeletor's initial core design did carry over to the figure and also carried over to the way he looked in the Filmation cartoon. So this is very much a very different-looking Skeletor, completely from the minds of Mattel. Now, here's the problem I have with this figure. It's this piece right here. He has a torso piece, which serves to also be the thing that has the cape attached to it. It looks good, especially if you did want to have him looking a little bit more different than what your traditional Skeletors would look like. The problem with it, though, is there's no real place that it attaches onto the figure's torso. It literally just sits on top of his body like a shell. You can flick it around. I mean, you can kind of help to bring it down just a little bit, but it doesn't friction in place. It doesn't tab in place. You sort of just bring it down and hope you don't bang it. One thing they did actually do nicely was they sculpted an opening right at the very top of it that fits around the skull and or at least the crossbones detailing that he has on the front of his torso. You can kind of just line things up like that. But it doesn't plug into place. I mean, you literally could just remove it altogether. Why wouldn't they have not put connecting points or something on the back? So at least this torso piece would have stayed in place. It's almost as if they put it in there with completely the intended idea that a lot of people picking this up will not just display it as classic-looking Skeletor. I mean, really, once you remove the torso piece, we get that much closer to it looking like a classic-looking Skeletor. Now, of course, to finish off that look completely, we can go ahead and just hold on to the torso for dear life, pop off the head sculpt, and replace it then with the defaulted head, or not the defaulted head, the one that came included with the packaging, and instantly, you've got yourself a retro-looking Skeletor. Still, I got to feel like that's the reason why Mattel included this as a completely loose piece, something that was detachable with all the intended plan that everybody picking this figure up for themselves. You can say that's not the case. I'm going to display him as new Eternia Skeletor. That's baloney. You're going to display him as Retro Skeletor. I do at least appreciate the fact that if you wanted to, and you wanted to revert him back to a familiar looking Skeletor, you could really just do away with the torso piece. You could completely remove the head sculpt altogether, and you have yourself quite a fine-looking Skeletor underneath all of that. I mean, everything about this looks like regular-looking Skeletor, short of the fact of just taking his Havoc staff and getting the Havoc staff into his hand, which is made of softer plastic. The hands actually do pretty good of moving away from the palm so you can get the Havoc staff in place. Though the Havoc staff is a little tad thick on the actual handle portion, I don't know. I feel like I'm probably going to be displaying Skeletor, I think, on my shelf. As good as the idea was to throw in things that weren't your traditional Skeletor, I'm just ultimately going to display him with the regular look of Skeletor because it looks that much cooler. Of course, for the other figures detailing, the rest of the detailing for the sculpt of the figure, let's go ahead and just remove Havoc staff, put that to the side. Again, we've already talked about the fact that he has one of the best Skeletor head sculpts, at least of this scale, which I guess is a pretty small number to start off with. Traditionally, he does have the crossbone front armor piece that does have the skirting on the side that drapes over, of course, onto the shoulders. A section on the back that does hold the sword, which I guess is really the only thing that's a bit of a bummer about this figure. I would never display Skeletor with this type of sword. But going back to the idea before, yeah, you can slide that into the back and holster the sword if you want to have it displayed. But it just seems so out of place. This is not something that Skeletor, I know, old guy behind the camera, stuck in his ways. It's not something I would traditionally think of as Skeletor carrying around with him. I guess from the front, you're only really looking at the handle of it, and that sword could look like anything from at least looking at the front of the figure. Now again, looking at the bodies, I'm going to bring back in Revelation Skeletor. Does it not in fact seem like the torsos are the same? The biceps possibly may be the same, while the forearms are definitely retooled. The coloring of Skeletor also has changed quite a lot. Instead of more the blue that we went with Revelation, it kind of gets more of a kind of an aquamarine color, what we traditionally think of a classic-looking Skeletor. It does have, of course, the skirting of his loincloth down below. Some nice detailing and sculpting done to that. And a slightly different-looking belt area as well. Looks like he's got a bit of a face also there on the front. Again, a really nice-looking Skeletor. I feel almost bad the fact that I'm preaching the idea that this figure looks so much better once you remove all the things that Mattel wanted to put in there in the first place to make him looking like a unique-looking Skeletor. Ultimately, I just do want to change him back to looking like this. For the figure's articulation, sticking with what we have for right now, the head is on a ball joint, so yeah, it does rotate all the way around. It does look down, it does look up, it does also move back and forth. Taking then the arms, you can hinge those out. Taking the arms as well, you can rotate them all the way around. And taking the arms, just fixing off the joint where we left off. There we go. Oh, almost there. Almost there. Almost there. There we go. He does have a bicep swivel. The figure does have a double hinge on the elbow, and the figure does also have a swivel in the hand. You can hinge those back and forth. Upper torso is on a ball joint. The lower torso is on a swivel joint only on its own. So there's no ball joint down below. But I mean, here, that's more than enough for me. Legs split out quite comfortably. I say that. I'm not the guy that's doing the splits after all. There's the ball joints, by the way, underneath. There's always that derogatory, obligatory crotch shot for these figures. You can, of course, take the figures, move them forward and back on the legs. 3/4 of the way up the thigh, there's a swivel cut. You can rotate the leg all the way around. There's a double hinge on the knee. Again, like He-Man, he does have like calf articulation, and it's really loose. Both the legs, really, really loose. Legs go, or feet go back and forth this way, and there's also an ankle pivot. You know, the thing about it, too, is I don't know what Mattel has planned moving forward with this scale of line. I mean, we certainly have gotten ourselves quite a lot of the Master Universe Origins line. And with that, of course, that's catering towards fans of the original classic-looking figures from the 80s. In this case of Skeletor here, even though really, yeah, their intended plan was to throw in all these extra things that really did give him his own unique look. Ultimately, though, unlike He-Man, Skeletor at least has the means to strip down all the things that really were added after the fact. I'm just going to, again, bring in He-Man here. He-Man, you really can't do that. I mean, He-Man would be the equivalent of He-Man for, like, if we're looking at what Skeletor could do and what He-Man doesn't unfortunately do. He-Man, yeah, you would have been able to remove the shoulder pads. Those were already permanently attached to the front of his armor piece, so you can't take those off. So that, of course, right away makes it more a He-Man that doesn't change his look. Skeletor, though, by really including all these extra things that they added. I mean, I like the armor piece, but why didn't they make it to a point where you could actually clip this in and it would stay a little bit better than what it does? By having this be removable, and by giving you the option of removing this head, as good as it may be, and giving you a look like this, clearly, again, I feel like a lot of people have probably the desired look to have this guy displayed looking like this Skeletor. And considering as well that we've already gotten those Revelation figures, the Scareglow, the Stinkor, and Merman, I haven't had a chance yet to pick up. I might, if anything, not display Skeletor with the look that he now has from New Eternia, but rather instead, I'm going to probably display this particular Skeletor along with the Stinkor, along with the Scareglow, and all the other Revelation figures that I have already in my collection, and have this, if anything, as a more classic-looking Skeletor, and not necessarily the New Eternia look. I'm going to give an A for effort to Mattel for redesigning Skeletor, where, you look at the character and you still know it looks like Skeletor. They didn't redesign it to the point where you don't even recognize the character anymore. He-Man's also was like that too, although He-Man heavily influenced, I feel, from the original concept art of the figure line before the figure line even existed. Skeletor, if you go back and look at the original sketches of what that figure of character of Skeletor was going to look like, he still had the hood, and he still had the familiar looking armor that he wears still to this day. So in the case of redesigning Skeletor, this one, the New Eternia Skeletor, isn't so much based on the original concept art, but instead Mattel's brand new concept of what Skeletor can look like. And I could buy into the idea of Skeletor having beefier looking armor on his shoulders, sporting a helmeted head sculpt, and sporting a chin beard. Why not? I mean, I would question, how Bone could still grow hairs, but that's not neither here nor there. It's still a cool looking Skeletor. The problem with it, though, is by giving his armor the option to be removable, it clearly doesn't look like it taps into anything. I can understand if there was a plug or something that plugged into the hole on the back of his torso, something that would stabilize that armor. But for it being as loose as it is, every time you move the figure around with the armor that he comes out of the packaging with, it just doesn't stay in proper place. I gotta believe they put that in there intentionally. So easy it is to remove the armor because they know a lot of people getting this figure for themselves are not going to take the armor off his shoulders, is not going to change and swap out the head sculpt, and is not going to sit back and say, that's a nice looking Skeletor. And I still, for me, looking at through the course of this review, now even in final looks, the longer I look at this Skeletor, the less likely I am to go and revert him back to the way he looked when he first came out of the packaging. I like the look of it. I still think he looked like a sinister looking Skeletor. But when you're comparing it to how he looks right now, and considering as well that I thought the Revelation Skeletor was disappointing, this is going to be my stand-in Skeletor when it comes to displaying him with the taller scale Master Universe figures. Again, kudos to Mattel for redesigning him, but I think almost a stumbling block on their end was the fact that they had the armor removable in the first place. If they had permanently molded in there, I think people would just say, you know what, I'm going to keep it the way it is because I can't change it anyways. But to have it as easily removable as what it is, I think people are just going to ultimately display. I'm not going to speak for everybody. I can't speak for everybody, but I know certainly for myself, this is the way I'm going to be displaying this Skeletor moving forward. What do you guys think? Which way, by the way, would you display Skeletor on your shelf? The way that we have right now in the rotisserie, or the way we started the review with the chin beard? Again, how are we growing hair on Bone? The skin's gone. The pores completely disintegrated. How is he growing chin beard? And why is it the same coloring as his Bone? These are questions I'm never going to get answers to. But which way would you display Skeletor? Let me know down below in the comment section. By the way, if you guys are interested to pick this one up for yourself, I did find this over on Entertainment Earth's website. It just dropped over on their hot off the truck option, which basically is, if you ever go to their site, go up to where it says hot off the truck. It's all the stuff that they just recently got stock of, and it's usually the stuff that's all the brand new things. So as soon as I saw both New Eternia He-Man and New Eternia Skeletor, picked it up right away. I'm disappointed by the He-Man. I'm not disappointed at all with the Skeletor. Turned out to be a great looking figure. If you guys are new though, and you're interested to check out more from this channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. Turn on as well the bell notifications so you're going to get always those reminders of when new videos are popping up. And even though we are probably going to be leaving New Eternia for right now, probably will be going back to that as new figures pop up, but we are going to be looking at more Masters of Universe reviews coming up in the not so distant future. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.